My daughter, you are surely a gorgeous flame dancing in the hearth. Xiaoling's father had said that to her. It was a declaration that she'd taken to heart. But as tears streamed down her face at the memory, that beautiful flame was nothing more than a bed of ashes. Born to the affluent Feng clan, and the daughter of a blacksmith in a family of renowned craftsmen and artificiers, Xiaoling was exposed to the flame from the time she was a child into her teen years. Her father taught her the power of fire swiftly, and the lessons she learned were invaluable. Fire, she found, was a remarkable phenomenon. All the things it could do, the energy it could produce, the items it could create, and the many things it could destroy. Fire was to be respected, the flame to be nurtured and cared for. No true disciple of the forge could reach the status of master without learning to appreciate the flame. Xiaoling learned this well, and by the time she was 16, she was working as her father's aide in crafting weapons for the Wulin army. As war with Heathmore was raging, Emperor Gao Lei needed more weapons for his military, and it was the duty of the Feng clan to prove their merit and worth by crafting armor and weapons for the war effort, even though the constant demand was exhausting on her father. However, there was one point of excitement for Xiaoling. Every so often, a soldier would come to her father's forge to either place or collect the commissions. His name was Gao Shun. Xiaoling never talked to, or much cared, for any of the other soldiers or officers that came to speak with her father about matters of working or forging. They were of no interest to her, and since none of them knew of her personal skill with the forge, they didn't pay her any mind either. None even knew that she was a blacksmith of exceptional skill. But Gao Shun, he was different. A brave and handsome Tiandi, she found herself smiling when he came to talk to her. When he took off his helmet and politely bowed, she felt an inward fire within her own heart burning brightly, and she could see a slight spark in his own eyes as well. Perhaps that's why she felt so excited around him. They shared a familiar flame. Over time, the two began finding excuses to slip away from the forge, to just walk, or talk, or laugh. As the sun would set in the distance, she would rest herself against him, and their flames would burn together, and what a lovely fire they made. She prayed that someday Gao Shun would offer to never leave her, that he would take her with him, and they could light the world on fire together. Just them. The two of them. Forever. But time and war do not offer such wishes. Gao Shun was called off to battle in Heathmore, and Xiaoling heard nothing more from him for 2 years. Had he died? Was he all right? She wanted to know. She needed to find out. It was the only way she would find peace in her heart again, this unsettling fire within her that refused to be kindled until she knew the truth of what became of her beloved Gao Shun. There was no way to do this, at least not at first. No way that would be conventional. She had found one method. There was but one choice before her. She would need to cross into the Chang Pass, enter Heathmore, and find Gao Shun. But by imperial decree, only military officers, the emperor, his soldiers, and servants or attendants of the former three could cross Chang Pass. So she had limited options. She wasn't deterred. She told her father of her intentions, and with his reluctant blessings, she left home for good, to the palace. When she arrived, she placated herself and asked for a place within the palace as a blacksmith. She even offered several pieces of her own making, her finest weapons she'd crafted. However, the attendants and officers believed she was merely representing someone else, a skilled blacksmith sending his servant to speak on his behalf. But she was adamant that she was the smith responsible. Frustrated by her lies, she was turned away. But Xiaoling would not be stopped. She waited 2 months to let her face fade from the memory of the officers. In that time, she worked to create new weapons, spears, lances, swords, and other magnificent items. After her long wait, she cut her hair short and wrapped her chest, disguising herself as a young man. Once properly disguised, she approached in the guise of a young blacksmith intent on sharing his wares and talents with the imperial court. This time, she was not turned away. She was told to wait in the pavilion until such a time as the Emperor Gao Lei admitted her. The Emperor was impressed with the weapons, but was still skeptical. It was possible this strange young man was of lowly birth and merely seeking quick advancement through some smithing skill. Xiaoling was told she would first have to take the Keiju, a civil service exam which allowed anyone of any birth to potentially find a place within the world of officials and nobles. Many looked at this young boy's drabby clothes, burnt face, and fiery eyes and assumed he was too uneducated to possibly pass the Keiju. But Xiaoling swore in 1 month's time she would pass, and she would receive a station in the emperor's service. She studied for weeks. She pored over books of history, economics, classic literature, language. She improved her calligraphy, and she ensured she understood the most fundamental rules of court etiquette and procedure. To the surprise of many, the young Xiaoling performed admirably on the Keiju, receiving an outstanding score that earned her an audience with the emperor himself. Taking her finest creations with her, Xiaoling appeared before the emperor on an early morning while the emperor held court. The day that Xiaoling appeared before Emperor Gao Lei, he was meeting with his blue dragon, the Tian Qilong. Xiaoling kowtowed and behaved as was expected of a proper servant. But Tian Qilong saw through her disguise almost at once, asking why she disguised herself so. The court flew into a surprised uproar as Xiaoling's disguise was swiftly exposed by the blue dragon. Without wavering, she cried out that she had still passed the Keiju and that all that she had crafted was indeed her work, and she demanded that she be allowed her wish to gain a high enough rank to pass Chang Pass with the emperor's armies and retinue. When Gao Lei asked why, Xiaoling revealed her wishes: to find her true love Gao Shun. Gao Lei was startled by this and told her to wait on his decision. After much deliberation and discussion, Gao Lei came to a compromise. Xiaoling was a woman, true, but if these weapons she crafted were really hers, her talent could not be wasted. So a test and opportunity was in order. Gao Lei called Xiaoling to him once more and offered her a test. I will grant you the status of palace blacksmith, or perhaps an even higher status in my court. But first you will craft for me the finest blade in all of China, a sword that cannot break, a sword that will put even the crafts of my beloved Sunda to shame. Do this for me, and when you are done, present it to me. After that, I shall give you exactly what you asked for. So Xiaoling agreed to the challenge. Months passed, long, grueling months of trials and errors, failures and setbacks. She was watched closely by Gao Lei and his attendants to assure she did not seek help or assistance. But at last, Xiaoling had crafted something impressive. When she appeared again before the emperor, she held before him a long Changdao, the Feng Huang Bao Ying, the phoenix's retribution, a sword that is birthed and wreathed in fire. The blade itself seemed to breathe like a flame, and even the touch felt an odd warmth to it. According to Xiaoling, the sword was crafted by secret methods to make it bite like fire, and the sword was completely unbreakable. Gao Lei was amazed by the results, and was now looked to honor his promise. But Gao Lei was not a fool. There was a secret he knew that he could not share with Xiaoling or any of his advisors or officials. Only a select few knew what Gao Lei did, and it was this very secret that Gao Lei was desperate to protect. Still, a promise made by the emperor was one that had to be upheld, but he had a plan. Your work is exemplary, he told her. Truly, you are to be commended. And as promised, I offer you the highest status I can give. A place in the pavilion of consorts in the inner palace. You shall be made a consort of the highest level. Xiaoling's heart fell at the news. This was not what she wanted. In fact, it was perhaps the worst reward she could think of. The imperial concubines were not mere women of low station or slaves. They had high station depending on the rank of the concubine. They could very easily have the emperor's ear at any time if they were one of the 4 consorts. They were pampered, cared for, and at times given important political matters to oversee if they were matters the emperor had little time for as he was busy with matters of war. To be made a high-ranking consort was one of the highest stations a woman could have in the imperial palace. But for Xiaoling, it was also a prison. The consorts were to be available to the emperor at all times, and were not allowed to leave the pavilion without the emperor's personal escort. The treachery of Gao Lei was complete. He had given Xiaoling exactly what she asked for, a high station in his palace. but in turn he had trapped her from ever going to find her love beyond Chang Pass. She did not understand why the Emperor had done this. Was it that he had fallen for her? How was that possible? She was not beautiful. Her body had burns. Her hands were hard from working a forge, and though her face did have nice features, there was a long burn mark on her neck up to her cheek that surely would turn him away. Truly, Xiaoling underestimated her own physical beauty, but it was not just her beauty that led to her station as consort. But she had no idea of Gao Lei's true plans. 2 long years passed that Xiaoling lived in the pavilion as the Emperor's consort. He visited her seldom, but when he did, she was to perform for him. She could not refuse. To refuse the Emperor was like refusing the will of heaven itself. But in her heart, she detested Gao Lei. She hated this man who knew her heart's true desire and still willingly kept her from achieving it. Her only escape was when she was given the chance every so often to leave the pavilion to visit the smithy, where she was allowed to oversee but not partake in the smithing work. She was named Xian Fei, or the worthy consort, for she had proven herself worthy of the title. This sudden and unprecedented elevation was seen as an insult to the entire inner palace, and though she had one of the highest ranks, she was hated and detested by all except the Lady Nuhua, the virtuous consort. Nuhua attempted to help Xiaoling adjust and find some degree of joy in the life of a consort. "I know it's not ideal, but you must attempt to make your peace," Nuhua explained to Xiaoling during dinner one night. "Beyond Chang Pass is nothing but war. The Emperor protects you here, and all we need do is please the Emperor and bear his seed." Xiaoling knew that Nuhua meant well, but she only longed to flee the inner palace and find her true love, and if not that, at least put a hammer back in her hand. Her resentment for Gao Lei grew with each passing week of her confinement. But not once did she reveal her hatred. The night of Sunda's gambit in the invasion of the Blackstone Legion, the inner palace was evacuated. All consorts were led by Imperial Guard escort out of the palace and back towards China, as the Emperor had surely fallen. Xiaoling was not upset at his falling, but she did not flee with the consorts. After all that she'd suffered, all she'd endured, she could not return in shame and defeat. She had gone from the daughter of a blacksmith, a young smith of the Emperor, to a favored consort, and she would not go home without answers. And to ensure she would get what she sought, she would raid the Emperor's own throne room for any documents or news that might hint at the fate of her beloved. Lady Nuhua cried out to her to come back, but Xiaoling was not to be deterred. She ran from the palace and entered the throne room of Gao Lei, only to discover that she was not alone. There, setting fire to his research and his devices, was Sun Da, the alchemist and right hand of the Emperor himself. When he saw Xiaoling, he tutted and told her to leave with the other women of the court. She demanded information. If anyone knew the truth about Gao Shun, it would be Sun Da. "Forget him!" Sun Da snapped. "Do you not think if it were possible to see him, the Emperor would have made it so years ago? Return home and forget it." But Xiaoling argued back. "I have not suffered these daily humiliations for nearly 3 years to be turned away now. I will know the fate of Gao Shun." Seeing she would not be satisfied, Sun Da finally spoke, but his words held a twisted sense of amusement, as if this information was as entertaining to him as damning for her. "Have you not noticed the similarity in their names yet, foolish girl? Gao Lei, Gao Shun? Idiot child. Gao Shun's true name is Gao Xin, the illegitimate brother of the Emperor. To prevent any challenges to his succession, Gao Lei made him soldier in the army to prevent him from being discovered for who he was and potentially accumulating political strength. Gao Xin, the fool, had no interest in the throne and was content to be a mere officer, a Tian Di. But then he fell in love with you. Your life would have been threatened if it were revealed he might sire a child with you, a new imperial line. And the Emperor realized this the minute you revealed his name. Of course Gao Lei locked you within his harem, a means to keep his line safe and insult his brother in the same move." The rage that pulsed through Xiaoling was like an inferno. She screamed in rage and charged Sun Da, but no sooner had they begun their brawl than the entire palace began to crumble around them, fire engulfing the resplendent room. The foundations crumbled, the pillars cracked, and all was lost in a sea of fire, rubble, and stone. Beneath the burning hot rocks and fire, Xiaoling, the blacksmith and consort, was lost. When Xiaoling awoke, she was far from the palace, resting beneath a tent settled in an icy mountain of Valkenheim, far from China and Chang Pass. She had made it. She was in Heathmoor. But how? When? She discovered that after the Blackstones and Astria had left, many Wulin had defected to her banner with Sun Da among them, taking his knowledge and dangerous creations with him. Tian Xilong, the Blue Dragon, had returned too late to save Gao Lei, and instead had begun searching for survivors. Lady Nuhua, Xiaoling's only friend in the inner palace, had also been there, desperate to find Xiaoling and rescue her. Through their combined efforts, Tian Xilong and Lady Nuhua had found Xiaoling and pulled her from the rubble. It was a miracle she was alive. A miracle, like a phoenix from the ashes. She was also able to receive visitors. When she was finally able to receive visitors, Xilong and Nuhua themselves came to see her. Tears were shed over the fall of the Wulin, and Nuhua wept bitterly with Xiaoling over all they'd lost. Tian Xilong offered to escort the women back to China with his warband, but to his surprise, both refused. In fact, Xiaoling was adamant that she would find him. She would find the truth. She would uncover the location of Gao Shun. Tian Xilong then informed her that he had known for some time of Gao Lei's intentions with her and with his brother, but was forbidden by his oaths to say a word. Now, with Gao Lei dethroned, those oaths held no meaning. He admitted he had no idea where Gao Shun was, or if he was even alive. It was possible his warband was still out there, still fighting and surviving in Heathmoor. Perhaps they would find him, or at least answers. "If there is even a chance of his survival," Xiaoling cried, "I will find it and chase it. I care not about his status or imperial lines." "I warn you," Xiaoling said gravely, "this is no place for consorts. This is war, and only warriors will last in these lands. If you are not prepared to fight and die in battle, you have no place here." "Then we will become warriors," Xiaoling shouted. "I will be what I must. I will forge myself into any weapon necessary." At the mention of forging a weapon, Nuhua gasped and ran from the tent, to return only a few moments later with a large item wrapped in burnt cloth and tapestry. She said it was found in the rubble with Xiaoling, from the throne room of Gao Lei, perfectly preserved among the flames, and unwrapped from the cloth was the Feng Huang Bao Ying, the Phoenix's retribution. "I do not believe Gao Lei has any use for your sword now," Xiao Xinglong pointed out warmly. "Perhaps a phoenix like yourself should find new use for it." The Blue Dragon Corps, the warriors who swore loyalty to Tian Xilong, travel across Heathmoor, seeking fellow lost Wulin in need of a refuge and sanctuary. Among their number are two Zhan Hu women who carry with them a regal countenance. Both are not particularly adept, but they both are determined and unwilling to flee from their post. One in particular burns ever brighter, her blazing sword seeking fresh prey, and her eyes always scanning the horizon for something she yearns to find. Where she goes, she forges a new path of destruction. It is also noted that the Blue Dragon Corps is never without quality arms and armor, and perhaps it is because they have a forge of phoenix fire watched over by a worthy consort.